There can never be a compromise between the two. The flesh and the spirit can never reach a happy medium. One is always the master, and whichever one becomes the master always makes the other its slave. If your spirit gains supremacy, it dictates the activity of your flesh. But if your flesh gains control, it will determine the direction of your spirit. Help me somebody right there. So David, under the impulses of his flesh, in 2 Samuel chapter 3, he resorts to polygamy. He takes multiple wives in his efforts to acquire and fortify the kingdom that God had promised him. He felt, yes, I know God said this was mine, but God is not moving fast enough on my behalf. So I've got to do some things that will strengthen me myself. So he leaves the path of faith and fellowship with God to walk the crooked ways of the flesh, taking wives of the heathen which would bear him fruit. Help me somebody, that would be very bitter to his taste. His fleshly desires and his fleshly impulses leads him to unite with those and sow seed into that which was contrary to God's will and purpose for his life, bearing fruit that would cause him suffering and pain, having offspring that would be the source of much trouble. He has a son named Amnon who would rape his sister Tamar. He has another son, Absalom, who would murder his brother Amnon for raping his sister Tamar and then overthrow his father. And then he had another son named Adonijah who would declare himself king in opposition to David's choice of Solomon. How many of you know that whenever you allow your flesh to dictate and determine the seed you sow, baby, the harvest that you reap will be very detrimental to your life? Can I keep on preaching? David continues on his path of fleshly leadings, fleshly alliances, fleshly decisions, until he declares, after a disastrous attempt to link up with Saul's general Abner, he said, I am this day weak, though anointed. And he was saying that he had become ineffective. He had become powerless to his flesh, despite the anointing that was upon his life. That even though he was called by God, he still made mistakes. He still had failures. He still made bad decisions. He still engaged in ungodly relationships. He still had urges and inclinations that he wished he never had. He said, I'm weak though anointed. I'm weak though anointed. And I know that there are some anointed people right now under the sound of my voice that feel the exact same way. I'm weak sexually though anointed. I'm weak financially though anointed. I'm weak emotionally. I'm weak mentally. I'm weak relationally. Even though I'm anointed, I can cast the devil out of others and pray victory into their lives, but I can't seem to keep my own life together. I can lift up somebody else's spirit, but I'm depressed when I get home. I can comfort those in sorrow, but I can't help me somebody dry my own tears. I can believe for somebody else's victory, somebody else's deliverance, somebody else's breakthrough, but I can't believe for my own. Look at somebody and say, I'm weak though I'm anointed. I'm weak even though I'm anointed, and the weakness of my flesh has caused me to make some decisions that I wish I never made, caused me to do some things that I wished I'd never done, caused me to sow seed that I wish I'd never sown, and reap a harvest I wish I never reaped. Am I in anybody's house this morning? Is there anybody here this morning honest enough to admit that you're weak even though you're anointed, and you don't know how much longer you'll be able to continue the way you've been proceeding, because the anointing that you walk in causes everybody to have overblown expectations concerning your life. So they expect you to always be the head and not the tail, always be on top and not on bottom, and and they cannot understand when they find out that you have some of the same problems that they have. Help me preach, preachers. They always expect you to always be victorious in every battle that you're in. You're never supposed to be fearful. You're never supposed to be sad. You're never supposed to be worried. You're never supposed to act irrational because you're anointed. You're never supposed to have fleshly desires. Never desire pity or empathy. Never have a bad day. Never have a momentary breakdown because you're anointed. You're never supposed to be vulnerable. Never supposed to have marriage problems. Never supposed to have emotional issues because you're anointed. But touch somebody and tell them, even though I'm anointed, I still get weak sometimes.